Hello everyone, in this video we are going to see about the flow oriented modeling in software engineering, requirements engineering concepts. Now let us see first of all what is a data flow diagram. It represents how the data objects are transformed as they move through the system. So a data flow diagram, DFD, is a diagrammatic form that is used. Considered by many to be an old school approach, flow-oriented modeling continues to provide a view of the system that is unique. It should be used to supplement other analysis model elements. Actually, what does it say is, this is the traditional model of representing the flow of the system process. This data flow diagram diagrammatically represents the data flow from one module to the other module, and it helps to analyze the model elements. This is the flow model. Every computer-based system is an information transform. So normally we give the input, the system processes it and get the output. And now here, these are all the components of this flow modeling notation. So one is the external entity, because any process is affected by the external environment. So this external entity always plays a role in the model. So that is represented by a filled square, and process is defined by a filled circle, and the arrow, directed arrow, which is given as a data flow, and this parallel line shows the data store, because always data flow from the store to the sink. Okay, and now it is the external entity, a producer or a consumer of data. They are called as an external entity. For example, a person, a device, or a sensor. So another example we can see is a computer-based system. Data must always originate somewhere and must always be sent to something, because data always flow from one module to the other module, one process to the other process. Okay, so a process is a data transformer, changes the input to the output. By any process, the transition takes place, the transformation takes place. For example, we compute the taxes, we determine the area of any polygon, we format the report, we display the graph. These are all the examples of a process. So data must always be processed in some way to achieve the system function. Then data flows through a system beginning as input and be transformed into the output. So this is the, just it is given, for example, computing the area of a triangle. So base and height are given as the input, and the computing the triangle area with the formula half BH. So the area is given as an output. So some input is got from other source, and the process does the process, and then it gives the output to the next level of information or the next module. Data store, it is often used for data for the later use, for the future use. For example, we collect the data from the sensors. We also collect from the report that has been required, that will help to look up the data. Okay, so that data may have some type, sensor type, the location, the age, any information, any data can be stored in a form of a table or the form of table, collection of tables. And then the sensor data, which is the data store, which is given up and down in order to get the information about the lookup procedure. That means here the sensor data is a storage, the sensor number is given as the input, and for that sensor number, the type of the sensor, the location where it is, and the age of the is, everything is given as an output data. So the data flows between the modules. Next one, data flow diagramming guidelines. All icons must be labeled with the meaningful names. The DFD evolves through a number of levels of detail. Always begin with the context level diagram, also called level 0. Always show external entities at level 0 and 1. So here we can draw the DFD, the data flow diagram, which starts from the level 0. That diagram is called as a context level diagram, and we can always show the external entities at level 0 and 1. That means by the external environment, external entities, the changes starts to happen in the initial stage. So after that, when the changes happen in continuation, the data is got from level to level and not from the previous level. Okay, then next one is the Let us see about what is the level 0 diagram. Level 0 data flow diagram should depict the software system as a single bubble. We use a bubble to represent a level 0 system, and it consists of the primary input and the output should be carefully noted. Refinement should begin by isolating the candidate processes, data objects and data stores to be represented by the next level. All arrows and bubbles should be labeled with the meaningful names. Information flow continuity must be maintained from level to level. One bubble at a time should be refined. So actually what does it mean is, we first define a level 0 is the bubble diagram. So every bubble expands to the other modules, other levels. So all the generally the 0 level diagram, which is the context diagram, has the single bubble to explain the data flow diagram. But in the next consecutive levels, each bubble should be refined in the next consecutive levels in order to obtain the complete data flow diagram of the model. So this is the first level diagram, DFD, the 0. Review the data model to isolate data objects and use the grammatical parts to determine the operation. So every level has some operations to be performed. You have to define that level. Determine the external entities, the producers or the consumers of the data, and create a 0 level DFD, which is the context diagram. Next one. So this is a diagram is given over here. It's a safe home software. The control panel sensors are the input, and the user commands or data passes into the software. Users may require for what is the sensor, what is the current information, what is the status of the sensor. So everything is given as a request from the user, and then the system displays the result to the output system, like the control panel display some alarm. For example, the oven in the home system may reach some level, the heater in the system at home, or any other electrical appliances may be on and off. So all these things are signaled by the alarm and some telephone lines. So these lines are connected by the safe home software. So some are given as the input, which is from the control panel, and the sensors give the input, and the safe home software processes those data and give it as an output to the output system. And now this is what explained over in this page. So the safe home security system enables the homeowner to configure the security system. When it is installed, monitors all the sensors connected to the security system and interacts with the homeowner through the internet, a PC or a control panel. So during the installation, the safe home system is given, each number is sensor is given a number, a password, and all those things. So so this page explains how the sensor senses the home system and gives the input, and it is passed as a data to the next level diagram, and how the data flow diagram is mentioned as a flow oriented model. Okay, so now the next level of diagram, which is that level 1, a grammatical parse on the narrative that describes the context level bubble. That means in the context level bubble, in the 0 level diagram, every bubble has to be given in grammatical parse. That means you have to explain in a narrative manner what every process does. Isolate all the nouns and noun phrases and verbs and verb phrases. So we have to isolate what are all the nouns and what are all the verbs. That means what are all the actions and what are all the activities. And then verbs are processes which are required and are represented as the bubbles in the subsequent DFD. So these verbs are continuously explained in the consecutive DFDs. Nouns are the external entities, data objects, control objects, and a data store. That means data comes from the external entities. They are all the noun. And when the data is passed, it is processed, it is given as a verb, which is an entity which has to be processed for the consecutive data flow diagram levels. So this is what the explanation of the previous diagram. So previously there was one particular system, like a sensor give the input, there is a central bubble is a software system and gives the output. Now every every diagram is now expanded. So we can see a control panel, and then here sensors, then we have user commands, interact with the user, and they give the password to enter the system. They process the password, they validate the password. If it is okay, it is allowed to display the messages and the status. If it is not valid, again the password is asked for. So interaction by the password is explained in the first level, and then once it's interact with the user, they configure the system, they activate or deactivate the system with their commands, and the configuration information is displayed as a data, as a configuration data, and the sensor information is received from the monitor sensors, and based on the monitoring sensors, the sensor information is passed as a control panel display, or it is giving an alarm type, or it gives some message through the telephone line. So likewise, now we are seeing the first level diagram as a simple diagram having sensor on the control panel, and next center is the software panel, software process, and output is the display message. That was a 0 level diagram. Now it is expanded to a level 1 diagram with more nouns and more verbs. And now next, level 2 diagram, constructing a DFD level 2 defines the monitor sensors process. Again we are further refining the processes into much explanation. Like configuration information is one level, it is taken. So how it is configured, the data is configured, the setup is assess against the setup. So read the sensor data, identify the sensor ID, and find out the location where the sensor is, and format the display pattern, and then generate the alarm signal. What is the alarm type, what is the telephone number they have through which you are getting the telephone message. So that level is expanded to the next level diagram, that is the level 2. So that's all. So this is the way the flow oriented modeling should happen. Initially level 0 should be drawn as a context level diagram, which only the input, process, output as a minimum notation, and every level is expanded to the subsequent levels using the nouns and the verbs from the context diagram to the next expanded diagram. So here is the specs, that is the specification of the process. So how the process transforms, the steps are given here. The process transformation performs the password validation at the control panel for the safe home security system, and then it processes the password, and then interact with the user function. So the first password is compared with the previous master password. If it is okay, then they can proceed. If it is not okay, it is given invalid message. So after that, so this is the specification how to transform the one level diagram to the next level diagram, and consequently elaborating the diagrams into. So this is all based on the flow of the data. So it is called as a flow oriented modeling of software requirements. So that's all the concept, and thanks for watching.